सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.
You're listening to Bare Knuckle Bhakti Shorties on the Bhakti Recovery Podcast with Jiva G, coming at you every Monday with a little spiritual something. Good morning. It's autumn and it's warm. I'm in the woods and it's super warm. It's like, I don't know, must be 18 degrees Celsius, which is like 65, I don't know, something like that in Fahrenheit. Wonderfully beautiful sort of Indian summer. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that anymore. I mean, no offense. I wanted to talk about the process of surrender. I want to talk about the process of surrender through the eyes of the Gita and through the 12 steps. You know, when we talk about the whole process of Krishna and Arjuna in the Gita, that whole process of Arjuna going through that excruciating dilemma. When we start in the second chapter of the summary of the Gita, that whole process of Krishna speaking to him, trying to convince him trying to explain to him things that humans who have attachments are extreme. It's extremely difficult to understand these things as a mere human, let alone Arjuna, who was a prince. He was an amazing warrior, intelligent and beautiful. He was the whole package. So Arjuna, as my understanding, is fighting the fact of what Krishna wants for him. He's thinking about it and mowing it over. He can't get his head around the fact that he will have to eventually go to battle. And not only go to battle with just regular human beings, he is to go to battle with his family. His uncle, his grandfather, all kinds of family members that he will have to execute. While Arjuna is discussing with Krishna that he can't do this, he's weak, and saying that he just doesn't see that he doesn't see that that's God's will. I think at this point, Arjuna's not really convinced. I mean, he knows that Krishna is God, but he still sees him as a cousin. And because of the lack of understanding, which we all have, we can't really see the big picture. And that's basically what I wanted to talk about. When I'm speaking of the Gita, I'm very careful to explicitly say, when I share about the Gita, I share experientially. I'm not one of those scholars. So, and I'm trying to take this into a 12-step lens. So if any of you Vedic scholars out there find fault with what I say, I'm open to listening. And that's what we do in a 12-step program. What we do in a 12-step program is we recognize that struggle. We recognize the fact that we are struggling with surrender and giving our will and our lives over to the care of God. And so when I've heard lately, and this is a difference. I'm not criticizing, I'm being discerning. There's a really big difference between criticizing devotees and just having discernment. So I've heard lately that somebody was told either they do a 12-step program or they do Krishna consciousness, and both are not compatible. what I would give right now to have a conversation with this person. And not an argument, just facts. Anything that he can pull up with the Gita or the mission, I will pull up in the 12 steps and tell him how that's exactly the same thing. But that's beside the point. That's why I'm here right now talking to you guys, trying to put those things together. And I thank that person because it makes me think, is it different? Do I have to choose? For me, no way. They're not separate. They can't be separated. That's just the way I live my life. That's just what I've chosen. And they are very compatible. Maybe not to be a monk, but I'm not aspiring to be a monk. So, what we talk about in the program, when we go through the steps, we admit we're powerless and our lives had become unmanageable. We're powerless over our addictions, anartas, and associated behaviors, and our lives had become unmanageable. Now this can happen in all different ways. We look at Arjuna. His life was completely unmanageable on that battlefield and totally powerless over the fact that this is happening. You can't change it. This is what happens. And until he admitted that he was powerless, only then could he go to the second step, which is come to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity, which means we try to understand what God, well, that's later, it's actually the 11th step, but in the second step is we believe that maybe there is a power greater than ourselves that can restore us to sanity, which means get us into the right thinking, get us into the spot where we're not deciding. We're powerless anyway. And that maybe the power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, into clear-mindedness. You may say in your own life that your life isn't unmanageable. I would beg to differ. I would beg to differ because while maybe an addict or an alcoholic or a codependent, when it gets to the extremes of getting like beaten by their partners or whatever it is, that's very clear unmanageability. Addicts, alcoholics, and stuff, we actually have that blessing of being able to see that blatantly. It gets more difficult when the unmanageability is really on the inside. Our lives, our thoughts, the inside life and thought becomes unmanageable. In this age of Kali, I would beg you to be a little bit more, to dig a little deeper on that one. The second part of the first step, that our lives had become unmanageable. It doesn't say our outside life. So, coming to the point where, let's just take this in the Arjuna sense, where Arjuna says, I can't do this anymore. I'm reaching out to you, Krishna. I can't. I'm defeated. That's where he takes his first step. And then the second step, he becomes more willing to listen. We become willing to listen as only the dying can be, as it says in the 12 and 12. The last paragraph of the first step. We become willing to listen as only the dying can be. What a powerful statement is that. I think at a certain point of our lives, we get to the point where we realize what we've been doing is choosing the color of our lifeboats. Where we realize it doesn't matter, just get on that damn lifeboat. So, going on to step 3, we make a decision, and this is so important, because if we're making it, it's called Krishna consciousness. And the one thing in the third step, they don't say conscious decision. I would love to add, we make a conscious decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of Krishna as we understand Krishna. I have talked and spoken and debated with devotees about that last line, as we understand Krishna. And I beg to differ because this is the most important sentence in this whole thing. Well, not really, but it is very important. Because we can't, just like Arjuna, we can't understand Krishna. We can't understand Krishna. We can only understand from where we are at. Prabhupada writes it as it is. Sure, but does it mean that we understand it? Does it? Does it mean that we understand it? No, it doesn't. It means we understand it through the conditioning and the veil of Maya and the conditionings that we've had from this life and all of our past lives. That is our understanding. So it is so important to make a decision to turn our will in our lives, a conscious decision, to turn our will and our lives over to the care of Krishna as we understand him, Because that changes. Our understanding changed, just like Arjuna's understanding changed. It changed. The more he was willing to give his will and his life over, the more his understanding about what Krishna's will is was clear to him. And it's the same for us. So now that we've gotten to that point, and let me give a little side note here. The steps are not a one and done. Krishna consciousness is not a one and done. So, I read the Gita and bloop, close the book and I'm done. Same with the steps. The steps are an actual functional action that we take in Krishna consciousness to get through those anarthas. Period. No comma, no pause, just period. So, those are really important. Oops, my sweatshirt just fell off. Those are really, really important. That's the foundation of how we're going to continue in Krishna consciousness and the foundation of how we're going to continue in our program. Those first three steps are the very foundation of our program and our Krishna consciousness. When those three things are not consciously being made making that decision, maybe on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a hourly or minute, even second basis, everything that precedes is going to be self-will. And we all know how that goes. So let's go into the fourth step, where we take inventory. So we're taking inventory. Why do we take inventory? So we take a fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Why do we do that? Many of you might say, why do we have to dig up the past? Why do we have to dig up all those resentments? Why do we have to go there? Why can't we just decide let's just decide to move forward and forget about the past? Well, it doesn't frickin' work like that. Not for many, not for most. Some people can. Please introduce yourself and come on my program. Come on my on my podcast and explain to me how you can let go of the past. I would love to hear it, actually. And I don't mean that facetiously. I really mean that. Explain to me how it is. Maybe I'll invite Kastuba. I think he could tell us how it works. When we take that inventory, we're naming the things that get in the way. Whether it is a resentment, whether it is a character flaw, whether it is just some sort of lack of understanding that cause us to have bad behavior. I mean, I don't even want to call it bad, just behavior that's unhealthy. And we don't know what that is. And we don't find that common thread in all of those things. That's why we take the inventory. We're not going to be able to get rid of them. I feel like it's the fast track. I mean, people say just chant your 16 rounds and be happy. Dude, I don't know about that. I mean, I believe that that's true. But like I always say, I got to take the little bus to school. That's not going to work for me. I need to know what I'm purifying myself from. Of course I need to know where I'm going. Anyway, so Arjuna also realizes this is where I've been This is where I've been holding on to things. This is where my attachments are. I'm attached to my family. I'm attached to things the way they should be. I'm attached to being, this amazing kshatriya. I'm attached. And when Krishna tells him, these are just your petty attachments, it's hard for him to understand that. It's hard. It's hard for us to understand that. So knowing what those attachments are in order to release them is very important. It says so in the Gita. Correct me if I'm wrong. So here we go on to the fifth step. Now that we've done step 1, 2, 3, and 4, in the right mood of surrender and faith and handing our will over, deeply understanding to the best of our ability in that moment as we understand it, right? We move forward in the fifth step. And we say, in the fifth step, where we admit to ourselves, another human being, and God, and Krishna, the exact nature of those. It says in the program wrongs, but I would say dysfunctions. The exact nature of those dysfunctions. And it doesn't say the nature, it says the exact nature. The exact nature. Which means we have combed with a fine comb through those things. And we are going to see, what is that common thread? What is that common thread that always comes up over and over again? Because there will be, when you do a thorough 4 step, and you have a sponsor who has gone through the steps, and is going to be, I don't know, relentless? I don't know any other way of saying it. I don't mean it in a violent way, but we got to be thorough, relentless. They're going to really help you with that. They're going to help you find that commonality in all of the dysfunction, no matter what dysfunction it is. So after we've done that, there's a huge, for many of us, there's a huge release and a relief. There's a release of tension that's stored in our body, in our mind, in our emotions, in our tissues. And then we start the journey. It's so wonderful. It's so wonderful. We start the journey after that, because this is where we pray for the willingness to have Krishna. This is the 6th step. Remove these defects of character, and I will call them dysfunctions again. Pray to Krishna to remove these dysfunctions from our lives. The willingness. Did I say willingness? For the willingness. Because some of us aren't willing, let's face it. How many people here who are listening, just think to yourself, because I know in my journeys, there were certain behaviors I did not want to get rid of. First of all, there were behaviors that saved my life for a very long time, because I come from a very highly dysfunctional family and life and all of that stuff. Talk about self-will run riot. So how many people here are truly willing to have God remove all their defects of character? So I can name a couple that I wasn't willing to. I wasn't willing when I first got into recovery. I wasn't willing to I wasn't willing to see all of them. I loved to rage. I loved raging in a car. It was where I can vicariously live out my aggressive, my aggressions in the comforts of my own car, in the comforts of your own car. Road rage. I was not a drop of me willing to release that. So, but as time progressed, and as my program unfolded, and as I entered Krishna consciousness on top of all of that, I became willing to let go of more and more, because I was able to see it. I was able to see a little bit more of Krishna's will for me and the power to carry that out, which will come into the 11th step. So once we become willing, and you don't have to frickin' become willing. You don't even have to. You can become willing to just do a couple of them. The process will just happen anyway. If you're in it, it'll just happen anyway. So, anyway, we go on to the 7th step. We humbly ask Krishna to remove these dysfunctions. So what does that mean? It doesn't say we humbly ask ourselves to remove our own character defects. It does not say that. It says that we ask God to do that. Why? Because we know we can't remove a dysfunction with dysfunction. We can't remove a character defect with a character defect. We can't do that. Because we enter that way with being the almighty, the all-powerful, the all-seer, the all-doer. That's what we do when we think we can remove them. We pray for the willingness, but God's got to do it. We ain't all that. As much as we think we are, we're not all that. So here we are in the process. We've admitted we were powerless. We have faith. We come to believe a power greater than ourselves that can restore us to sanity. We make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of Krishna as we understand him. 4, take an inventory. 5, we admit it to ourselves, another human being, and Krishna, those dysfunctions. 6, we become willing to get rid of those. And 7, we ask them to be taken from us, lifted from us. I grappled so much with the 6th and the 7th step. I grappled so much for so long. This was like always, I did all my steps. I don't know how many times I've done the steps, but I've done steps quite a lot, quite often. And the 6th and the 7th was always sort of a gray area for me. I didn't get it. Because no matter how hard I tried, those character defects were still there. No matter how hard I tried, it was always there. And I fought and with like this. And it didn't work. And I had to hit a bottom with my character defects, and not just my drugs and alcohol, with the other ones, in order to understand that. So I had to go back to the 1st step to do the 6th step. Yeah, that's how it works. It is a labyrinth. So, so after the 6th and 7th step, we go on to the 8th step, which means we become willing we make a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. And I will encourage every single person who does those steps to put yourself on that list and God. And I would say that too with the 4th step. I forgot to say that. We always put ourselves and God on that. So, and for many of us, some of us didn't have substance problems, and some of us didn't really just go around hurting people all the time. Some of us, it's just a little more tricky. It's a little more ego oriented as far as subtly. And this is really important, especially for like alcoholics and addicts to do that. Like most of us have stolen, cheated, robbed, been bungholes. I'm not going to say the other word. That's probably not better anyway, but bungholes. And we have a lot of apologies to make, amends, not apologies. Apologies are empty words, amends are actions. But before we go on to the 9th step, we have to talk about our 8th step with our sponsor. Because in the 9th step it says we may direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And when, we got the classic example. If you're cheated, let's say you have a best friend and you cheated, you slept with their partner, and they're still together and you're in recovery now. That's something you're going to have to live with between you and God. You cannot be telling your best friend that you've slept with their partner just because you're feeling guilty. That's when it becomes an ego thing, because you're going to hurt them and their family. There are certain things that you just don't do if you're going to hurt somebody. Again, through your amends. Very difficult. So that's why it's not good to do that alone. Never do that alone. Always talk to someone else. Always talk to someone who's done it. Always talk to someone who knows the program inside and out. It's really important. Because I have encountered people who have made their 9th step amends and have relapsed after because it's just, they've opened a Pandora's box and they didn't check with anybody before they did it. Not a good idea. Warning, guys, not a good idea. So we're cleaning ourselves. We're cleaning ourselves of our quote-unquote sins. I like to see sin, the word sin, as a measurement from, people, there's a lot of stigma around the word sin. I like to see sin as a measurement between, let's say you're throwing a dart or you're shooting an arrow. You have the bullseye. And the measurement between where you've missed and the bullseye of where you want to be, that's sin. So somewhere I heard, and I tried to fact check that, and there wasn't any facts about it, but I heard someone told me once that was like a Greek measurement, sin. And I looked on Google, but I couldn't find anything. But I still like to see it that way. So after we've done that 8th and 9th step, and a lot of people have some really, really heavy guilt and shame, and some of that should be alleviated afterwards. And if you're working with somebody who has a deep understanding of this process, those things will be brought to the light. So let's move on to the 10th step, guys. The 10th step is like a continuation of the 10th step is a continuation of the 4th step. Yeah, correct. So in the 4th step, we do an inventory, but in the 10th step, we do a daily inventory. And when we're wrong, we promptly admit it. Continue to take our inventory, and when we're wrong, promptly admit it. So we've cleaned house. And once you clean the house, just like in a regular house, if you clean the house, it's not like it's going to stay clean forever. It gets dirty. So you've emptied the cellar. You've gotten rid of all this stuff you don't want to get rid of it, that you don't want to have in your stock room anymore. The stock room is clean, neat, and tidy. You've gotten rid of all the things that you don't need anymore. And now this is the upkeep. You got to keep it up. Not a one and done. Someone asked me once, man, you've been coming around the program for 25 years and you're clean and sober. This was a couple years ago. And I said, yeah. They said, why do you just keep going? Like, don't you think you're better now? And I said, well, I've also been taking a shower for the last, 56 years. I'm clean. So should I stop taking a shower? And that was something I saw, that sort of the wheels turning in their head. And I found that actually really profound, because it's exactly what it is. Oh my God, there's so many bugs out here. Sorry guys, if you hear me like snorting and snooting and puffing and blowing, it's because of the buggies. Okay, so we've done the 10th step every day, which means not just saying, I've done this wrong today, I've done that wrong today. Also mention in your daily inventory the things that you've done right. Have a gratitude list. Name 2 or 3 things, 4 things that you're grateful for at the end of the night. This shame and always looking at the negative is also not great. So I encourage everybody to put the positive things in that list as well. Also, after the 4th and 5th step, we also look at the positive stuff at the end. of how those character defects or those dysfunctions really lie in function and how we can turn those over. That's something really important. Because this is not about shaming us into humility. This is about self-reflection to be humble, not humiliated. It's really important. All right, we're going to 11th step. What an amazing step. This is the step where I can live in this step. I would say I'd live in this step. We saw through prayer, meditation, and the chanting of the holy names to improve our conscious contact with Krishna, praying only for Krishna's will for us and the power to carry that out. Wow. You know, I what I think is when we're seeking through prayer and meditation and the chanting of the holy names, you know, this is the one thing in traditional Gaudiya Vaishnav, the one thing that I would like to add, especially in my program. You know, it's not really encouraged in our tradition to quietly meditate or take some quiet time. It's not really part of the regimen. And I would encourage every single person to have that quiet time, that time for contemplation. It doesn't have to be, it can be anything you want. It could be quiet meditation if you want. It could be anything. Doesn't matter. Just as long as we're able to quietly reflect, you know. I feel sometimes in our tradition we're human doings, not human beings, and spirit souls in human doing bodies. And yes, that's very, very beneficial in some ways, in every way. But the missing element for me is the quiet contemplation or meditation. I need that. I really need that. So when I sought through prayer and meditation and the chanting of the holy names to improve my conscious contact with Krishna as I understand Krishna, praying only for Krishna's will for me and the power to carry that out, that's the third step 2.0. Third step 2.0. Because we try, it's like the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Those things come with time. That serenity prayer, living your life through that serenity prayer in Krishna consciousness, that's the goal for me. I'm not praying for moksha. I'm not praying for anything. I'm still at the very low level of bhakti, guys. I'm still like, get me out of this mess. I'm still that person in the ocean of material miseries, you know, with my hands reached out. And every once in a while, a little boat comes by. And we all travel the boat together. Sometimes another boat comes and we go to another boat. Sometimes we jump back into that water. Whatever it is, I'm still there. And that's just what it is. So let's get, and the 11th step is really, it's an ongoing thing. We're in the 11th step constantly, you know? What is Krishna's will for me, and what's the power to carry that out? What did Arjuna do? He finally understood Krishna's will for him, and he got the power to carry that out. Did he not? Hari Bol. Can't believe I just said that. So that's what happens. That's what happened in the Gita, among so many other things. But this is in a 12-step lens. And all the attachments fell by the wayside. And it was clear to him what he needed to do. Because it was Krishna's will for him, not his, Krishna's will. And he got that power to carry that out, and he even won. So, I mean, In a war, there's not really winners, but he won personally because he knew Krishna's will for him and the power to carry that out, and he got the power to carry that out. Basta. Let's go to the 12th step. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to those who still suffer and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. All of them. Not in some of our affairs, all of them. What a wonderful way to live life. Everything that we've received. I think in my last podcast, I talked about the Philly crew, service, all of that stuff. So what is the point of me accumulating all of this experience? What's the point of it? It has no point if it just dies with me in this stupid body. I have to give this to others. If I don't give this to others, it means nothing. It dies with me. Give freely, as everything was so freely given to you. If you look, all of us, every single one, I don't care how bad your story is, because mine's pretty damn bad. We were given so many things so freely, and we took those for granted. We really did. We can victimize ourselves. But if we don't see the big picture, a little bit of what maybe Krishna had in store for us, teeny little peek, well, like a nanosecond peek. If we don't get that, or at least willing to get that, life kind of sucks. My message is, after this whole process and after this process of Arjuna finally understanding what Krishna's will for him was and the power to carry that out, for us, we need to give that. Just like people give the Gita away, just like devotees go out on the street and try to give the message. That's what I'm doing. It's free. It costs nothing, guys. Take it. It's like, it's a freaking pot of gold. It's spiritual. It's being a spiritual billionaire to be able to understand all of that. You've been given it to me. I've gotten it. And I want to give it away. It's the endless pot of gold. It never, ever, ever is empty. Sometimes I have blinders on, though, and I can't see that. Reciprocal. What we give and get has to be a circle. Anyway, I really hope this helped. I really hope this gave some sort of clarity about the 12 steps in a Krishna conscious lens and vice versa. And I will reiterate, anyone who disagrees with me or would say I'm faulty in any way, I am very open to have a discussion. Just hit me up on email. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Anyway, guys, I love you all. This was not really a shorty. This was a longie. This was a 40-minute longie. Should I call it a longie? I think I'll call it a longie. All right, I'm going to enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. Walking in the woods. And it's sunny and warm. And I'm loving it. All right, guys. Haribo. Thanks for listening. I hope you liked the Monday Shorties. Don't forget to check out our full-length episodes on Thursdays. If you like what you heard, spread the word. Peace out.
सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.